Welcome back, everyone, to episode number 56 of the Beginner to Master Speedrun. I'm coming into today, rated 1945, on a win streak of 170 games. So let's try and keep it going. And yeah, hopefully I can keep getting closer to 2000. So let's hop into the first game. Okay, first opponent, playing Good Night to You. A nice username. We'll play e4. And we have a Nimzowitsch. Yeah, against the Nimzowitsch, let's play d4. And black can play d5 or e5. And now I have the choice to either play d5 myself and kick the knight, or play knight f3 and transpose into a Scotch. I'll play knight f3. Let's keep it in more normal territory. So if takes, it's a mainline Scotch. And queen f6. So this is a typical move, attacking the knight on d4. Let's go ahead and play c3. There is a famous game between Moist Critical and XQC. I think XQC was playing white and took on this position, hanging maiden 1.
No, please don't. And it's too soon. It's too soon, Hikaru.
Well, that's gotta be a world record. Thanks for the fat 10 gift subs, Pikachu.
But, okay, I'm not going to hang maiden 1. We'll play bishop to e3. And, yeah, making sure the knight's defended. We are entering, I think, what is like one of the most common lines within the Scotch Opening. And I think very often black will play knight ge7, and then white has a choice between bishop e2 or bishop c4. Bishop e6 also playable. Very flexible move, making sure the bishop's defended. So, yeah, I'll admit that I don't remember so much theory here. And there's also g3, bishop g2. I vaguely remember some lines with bishop c4, queen g6, hitting both pawns, and white can gambit. I'm going to be a bit safer with bishop e2. Because then if queen g6, I have bishop f3. I think this is just a more stable way of playing. Knight e7. And black does have the idea of playing d5. I'm actually wondering, like, if I castle and black plays d5, I take and then knight takes, could lead to some trades. It would probably help to know some theory here, but yeah, unfortunately I'm out of my prep. I could consider playing f4 with the idea to meet d5 with e5. And honestly, it looks kind of nice. Yeah, there might be some downside to this move that I'm expanding and my king's still in the center. But, I mean, I'm not worried about queen h4 because now I have g3. And yeah, with knight g6, I can castle, defending f4. And e5 is in the air. Yeah, as long as f4 and d4 are defended, I think everything should be under control for white. Black plays d6. Now, it's still a question like how to develop the knight, because if I play knight a3, or first of all, if I play knight d2, I obstruct the queen, I probably lose material on d4. So knight a3 is probably the way to go. And that way, I mean, I have knight c2 or knight c4 coming. Yeah, let's go ahead and play knight a3. It would be nice to play knight c4 and then just trade off knight for bishop, get the bishop pair. Black plays a6, so imagine preparing to meet knight c4 with bishop to a7. Also preventing knight b5. So I'm looking at knight c4, bishop a7, and then taking. And we simplify a bit. Could trade bishops. Yeah, I'm going to start with knight c4. Multi-purpose move, attacking the bishop, defending my own bishop. And now if I take, we could trade a couple pairs of minor pieces. But after all said and done, I mean, f4 would be attacked. I would have g3, allowing bishop h3. Looking for alternatives too. Like e5 is still a move in the position. e5 take. Might be a bit too overextending though. Another idea is just queen d2. Just being very solid. This actually looks a bit better. Rather than like simplifying right away. Yeah, I'm gonna play queen d2. Really just reinforcing the center, reinforcing f4. Because if I went for the other line, I think the play would probably be a bit easier for black. And in this line, I'm giving black hopefully more opportunities to go wrong. Black plays bishop d7, okay. Impatient move. I mean, let's get my rook into play. And this is purely intuitive. I know the e-file is a little bit blocked up, but imagine eventually the rook should be useful on e1. Okay, e4 is hit, so if I play bishop f3, there's knight h4, which is slightly annoying. I'm looking at this move, knight f5, which could lead to some chaos. Although then there's bishop takes f5. Yeah, that probably doesn't work. I mean, bishop f3, knight h4. I could play bishop f2. Is maybe a nice way to defend e4 tactically. Yeah, bishop f2. Gotta watch my time. Already burned a decent amount of time in this opening. Yeah, of course, if black takes on e4, I'll have discovered attacks on the e-file, discovered pin to win the queen. And the nice thing about this move, not only does it help unblock the e-file a little bit, but it also in some cases discourages knight h4. And might enable this move at some point. And black has stayed flexible, like not committing the king to either side. Imagine at some point black will castle. Probably kingside. If castling queenside feels like, I mean, there should be a decent attack for white. But even if castling kingside, I mean, there's potential to maybe hurl some pieces. Yes, one thing, if I ever play f5, I do lose control over the e5 square. So, I mean, bishop f3, I'm still allowing knight h4. If I take on c6, I think that only helps black. Knight f5. Knight f5, then there's queen takes e4. Okay, I'm going to start with bishop f3. And if black plays knight h4, I might just move back to d1. The rook would then be defending the pawn. Black plays b5, okay. Can I take now? This could lead to a lot of trades. Let's go for it. I'm looking at ideas of knight a5. Attacking the bishop. And the knight is a little bit sidelined, but I think everything should still be under control. And, I mean, this whole game I'm really just trying to be solid. Play g3, reinforcing f4, restricting the knight. Material's still equal, but I do have a nice kind of space advantage in the center and on the king side. Black has a time advantage though, down almost 3 minutes. So should up the tempo. Okay, let's put the rook on the e-file. And maybe at some point I can get in pawn e5. And I'm realizing that the knight is not really doing much on the queen side. So very likely I'll probably move it back towards the center. In a position like this, I'm really looking for my resources, like going forward in the middle game. What are my potential ways to improve the position? There is h4, h5. I don't think I ever want to play f5. e5 is definitely a resource. And then, of course, maneuvering my knight back. I think black was setting up some maybe c5 push. But now if the c-pawn moves, I win the d-pawn. So I am allowing the bishop to return to c6. But then the knight can come to d4 with tempo, maybe eventually come to f5. I'm dreaming of like the knight coming here and the queen coming here, and then eventually here. Still far away from that though. Another thing to consider is putting a rook on d1, creating the d-file battery and then going for this move. So that creates this battery. Hard to stop bishop g4. I'll just continue with the plan. Get the knight in. And if bishop g4, then maybe I want to consider f5. Like there's some potential tactics. Bishop g4, f5, and if knight here, I take and then knight c6, attacking the rook and threatening the fork. Like the knight could cause a lot of damage if this bishop removes itself, which it does. I mean, a few moves ago I said f5 is not the move I want to play, but if it works tactically, I guess black could take, but then I take back. And I mean, there's 95, we trade. I could also take and then play this move. I think I'm going to go for this though. Not 100% sure. Okay, black goes for this line. Probably a smart decision. Now, and can I make use of the space advantage? I could take and play queen d5. Yeah, there's some nice initiative here. Pawn's attacked. With this move, I do pin the f-pawn, so f6 is not possible. And if black plays rook e8, do I have time to shift over to the file? The problem is then there's rook here. Yeah, not so simple. I have f6. f6 doesn't look right. I'm going to play this move. Trying to prepare f6. Because black still can't play f6 himself. I really got to watch the time. Down, yeah, still over a minute. Maybe now rook d1? And the d-file is the only open file, so if we trade queens, I'll take with rook and then double up. Black might go for queen g5. Okay, black goes for c6, so I think I have to take and then double up. I mean, only white can be better here because I'm controlling the only open file. The question is, can black neutralize in time? I have this move. And now let's bring the king in. I think this is just a better endgame. Even though it's equal material, I have the more active rook. And this rook is just completely passive. Black would like to do this and this, but king e8 hangs g7. And sometimes, like, in these sort of rook endings, even when it is equal material, having an active rook versus passive rook is enough to win the game. This is really hard for black to do anything to make progress here. We might see the queenside pawns advance. But the plan is probably just to move my king here, make sure that there's no infiltration with the rook, and then eventually play rook a7, rook b7, try and win one of the pawns on the queen side. Yeah, king e2 to start. And now, yeah, now this looks good. Black can still hold with rook c6. Let's do this. Actually, maybe I do. What do I want to do? Let's do this first. I definitely don't want to repeat. I might improve the king side first. Black is still stuck. This might be the best strategy for black, is to play the waiting game. But I'll get a lot of free tempi to make improvements. I mean, one plan might be to play h4, g5, g6, and then create some mating attack. We see g6 from black. Okay. Still play h4. Wow, so do I have g5 now? I think I do. Maybe black can keep waiting. Now the plan is probably to get my king into the king side. Or get pawns like this. Yeah, now the king can just walk up. e5 is very weak. It's still really hard for black to do anything. We're both below a minute, but yeah, things are all under control. Black's still trying to hold on. e5 will fall. This is probably the best try, a4. Because if I take, there's a3 with a breakthrough. Okay, let's just win these pawns now. Very good fight. Okay, yeah. Thank goodness for en passant. If I didn't have en passant, I guess it would still be winning. My king was close enough. But yeah, there's cases like that where en passant is necessary. No stalemating. Okay. Yeah, very tough fights. I mean, there haven't been too many games in the speedrun that have been determined in the endgame, but this is one of them. And yeah, just going through the opening here, we got, I think, a pretty typical situation for the Scotch. There's a lot of playable moves here. Knight a3 is actually the engine's top choice, which maybe makes some sense, because, yeah, it's perhaps more of a question where the bishop wants to go and less of a question where the knight wants to go. Like if I get the knight to c4 quicker, then maybe it's a bit more pleasant for white. But going forward, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different moments that we could discuss in this game. But I think a big part of this game was just being patient and like gradually building up. I was considering knight f5 here, which is the engine's top choice. I rejected it because of bishop takes f5. And I don't fully understand. Ah, now I understand. For some reason I thought the bishop was hanging, but the knight defends. Okay, that's an oversight. Yeah, because when I was first looking at this move, I saw if queen takes e4, there's knight takes d6. And this would be good knight to my opponent. Takes, and white wins the queen. Yeah, knight f5 would have been really nice, and if takes, the knight's hit. Takes, knight d5 is coming. Actually, it looks like white's just winning a piece here. Knight f8, there's a lot of ways for white to convert. Knight d5 looks really nice with the e-file opening. Okay, so maybe I played a little bit too slowly there. But it led into a very instructive late middle game, early end game. Just going forward. Engine says this is equal. I think it was white still who was pushing for the edge. And once we got here, wow, so the engine still says this is equal. But why? It says king f8. Oh. Ah, this is really important. So f6 was actually a big mistake because it allowed me to infiltrate with the rook. But if black plays king f8 first, the idea is to play king e7, preventing rook d7. And if I play this, then there's rook e7. And it's a little bit different because if I do this, there's this, and then the king will come and the rook will be kicked back. And eventually black can neutralize the file. So what if I played this? And then this, and then if I play rook d7, so in this line, black either chases me back and then black can play rook d8, or chases me this way, and then black gets counterplay. My king's not close enough. So yeah, it would have come down to like, good timing on black's part to equalize. But yeah, f6 I guess was a little bit careless. Even though it looks natural in the position, it gave me just enough time to get my king in, and then black was very restricted. The position's not completely winning, but it was very pleasant to play. And eventually I made progress, and yeah, by the time we got here, it was pretty clearly winning. There's just one more moment I want to show, that if black had played a4 in this position, then you have to be really, really careful as white, because a move like f6 walks into a3, and black's actually breaking through and losing. And also if takes, there is a3 again, and if takes, it doesn't matter that white's up a lot of pawns, because black has a pawn that's about to queen. So if black played this, I was just going to play a3, and this way there's no breakthrough. If push, the pawns lock up, and if takes and takes, and if takes and takes. So yeah, these situations in king pawn endings can be really important to play precisely. Make sure you don't let the advantage slip. Okay, nice game. A lot of lessons to take away there. Let's keep it going, and we'll do another. Okay, next opponent, playing Road to 2100. I assume that's the way to pronounce that name, from New Zealand. And we have a Smith Morra. Haven't encountered too many Smith Morras in the speedrun. Actually, can't remember last time I encountered the Smith Morra. And usually when white plays d4 on move 2, c3 comes. And what I like to do is just accept the Gambit. And there's a few different things I can play. I'm going to start with knight c6 and pawn e6. Oh, bishop f4. Okay, usually people play knight f3, and then I wanted to go for the so-called Siberian trap. A bishop f4, I mean, looks like a very natural developing move. Not entirely sure how I'm supposed to deal with this. I mean, usually in this opening, as black, you just want to complete development and try and make sure that white doesn't get too much active counterplay. I mean, the way to go might be bishop b4, knight e7. Because there are some knight b5 ideas. And I think I would be safer just pinning the knight. Maybe in some cases taking the knight. Yeah, I don't have to take the knight right away. I think I'll start with knight e7. I'm imagining, yeah, if I get the chance, white's provoking me, I can take and play pawn d5. And I have conceded the bishop pair. But with pawn d5, I do strike in the center, trying to contest white's space advantage. And, I mean, this is pretty much what I want. It's to open the diagonal for the bishop, also grab initiative, still attacking white's bishop. I'm still holding on to my extra pawn. Yeah, I'm not sure whether to expect bishop d3 or bishop b5. If I were white, I'd probably play bishop d3, at least try and anticipate some eventual attack on the king side. But I don't think that's going to scare me away from castling. Like, I can still castle, and then very likely like have knight g6 or even bishop to f5. White plays bishop b3, so maybe trying to keep pressure against the d-pawn. Yeah, let's go ahead and castle. And now it's a question how to complete development. And bishop g4 comes to mind, probably the most active developing move. Yeah, because with bishop f5, bishop e6 seems a bit too passive. With bishop g4, in some sense I am tying the queen down to defending the knight. I mean, white might play queen d3 here, but then the queen could be hit with bishop f5. Okay, rook e1. So the first move that comes to mind is knight g6, attacking the bishop. But after bishop g3, I do have to ask myself like how I plan to defend the pawn. Maybe I can calculate d4 at some point. Bishop, or knight g6, bishop g3, d4. So if pawn takes, then I take here first. If queen takes, I take here. There might be queen takes b7 in that line. And another idea is just abandon the pawn. Like knight g6, bishop g3, and then queen f6. And I am counterattacking c3. Yeah, I have a feeling I'm going to end up going for that. Let's do it. I'll still take some time because, I mean, there's these d4 ideas. White plays bishop g5, which I'm pretty sure is a blunder. Not because I can take on g5. This would just lead to a trade. But I can take on f3. And then I win the knight, I lose a queen, I win white's queen, I lose my bishop, but then I win back the bishop, and I'll be up material. I'll be up a piece and a pawn in the end. So this is a pretty common tactical sequence. And yeah, usually the reason why you can't play bishop g5 as white in such positions. So yeah, it'll be worth analyzing after the game, like what I should have done after bishop g3. I was probably going to play queen f6. But now, yeah, white probably wishes they could go back in time here. Okay, so we trade. My bishop's hanging, but so is white's. I guess white could take and then win back the d-pawn. I don't think it matters which rook I take with. And at this point, I really just want to simplify. This move looks nice. Attacking the bishop. There might be ideas of knight e2 to eventually fork the king and pawn. Okay, bishop f3 prevents that idea. We'll take on d1. Offer the trade. Just making sure there's no funny business on this diagonal. I mean, if bishop takes, I checkmate, and if rook takes rook, I take, saving the pawn. Rook b1. I think I'll play knight a5. I can't play b6. I can't play rook b8 because then I walk into a pin. But knight a5 defends the pawn. It does put the knight on the side of the board. But the plan is to play b6 next. I should note, if bishop takes pawn, I take and then have a eventual back rank mate. Thinking g5 here. And there's also knight d3. Let's go with knight d3. Attacking the rook. Yeah, when I get the chance, I want to play b6. Stabilize the queen side. Eventually bring my king towards the center. Or at the very least make some loot for the king. Yeah, we'll play b6. Actually wondering about this move. Because the rook, I guess the rook has b4. There's also this move. Yeah, let's try and not overthink this. I'll poke at the bishop. Keeping the knight in the center. Yeah, the way to win such positions is really, I mean, first of all, to be patient, to not blunder anything, get your pieces to the ideal squares, and then eventually I want to use my extra material to win more material. I mean, probably target these pawns. If f4, I might move back to d3. Yeah, maybe c5 is the best square for the knight. So another endgame scenario. This endgame isn't as level or close to level as the previous endgame. Up a full piece. But hopefully it will still show some instructive technique. Yeah, knight c5 looks nice. And the rook is somewhat limited on squares. Looks like there's only this or this. Rook d4, I'm happy to trade rooks. And yeah, let's go for the active rook. Rook d2. Simple idea, rook a2. We might see bishop b5, attempting to get in this check. With this, I think I can just play a6, allowing the check, and then king f7. And the knights actually do a nice job controlling all these squares. So if rook e8, king f7, the bishop's essentially chased away from defending the rook. And if not rook e8, yeah, the bishop had to move back. Let's play this. We might see this move, threatening mate in 1. Or this move, defending the pawn. So what do I want to do? Let's attack the pawn. I don't think white can defend it. White could still try this move, though. And then I'll play g6. And still goes to show why you should never resign in such positions. Like if you're playing white, still some chances to try and create tricks. But now, yeah, things are pretty quickly crumbling for white. This rook is almost trapped. Controlling these squares. If rook g3, I have knight e4. I'm also controlling all of these squares. So only safe square is this square. Now maybe check. Yeah, the king is tied down to defending the bishop. If king here, it's a fork. If king there, I'll check, forcing bishop d1. And then there's knight b2. And white doesn't even have rook d3 because knight takes d3. So the horsies were put to work. I'm trying to conceptualize a mating idea here. Like if I take in king e2, like somehow maybe checkmate the king in the center of the board. But okay, white just resigns. So I think that was a pretty clean game. Hopefully goes to show at least one way to neutralize the Smith-Morra. Yeah, maybe my opponent didn't play like the most challenging approach in the opening. Generally, at least most Smith-Morra players will play knight f3, and then it's up to black to choose a setup here. As far as I know, bishop b4 is one of the best options. I think if my opponent played knight f3, I was going to play queen c7, and then after castle, play knight f6. And this is what I used to play for many years. And there's a cool line here that if white plays queen e2, which I think is the most common move, then black can play knight g4. And this move maybe does violate some principles, but it's actually one of the best moves in the position. And it leads into what's called the Siberian trap. So a lot of players, even up to like intermediate level, maybe up to this rating range, could fall into the trap of h3, which looks very natural to kick the knight. But in this position, black is completely winning after the next move, knight d4. And this is the whole point of knight g4, is to create the mating idea on h2. The knight is tied down. If takes, it's mate. And otherwise, black is threatening the queen, also threatening to take the knight with check and then mate. And black's just completely winning here. So yeah, in this position, I think white has to play something like g3. And then in many middle games, the knight will come to e5. Sometimes there's h5, h4. And yeah, the engine slightly prefers black here. Of course, none of that happened because my opponent played bishop f4. And yeah, what happened in the game, I don't think there's much to analyze apart from, I mean, what my opponent should have done was play bishop g3. And yeah, the engine says there's compensation for white because, yeah, it says equal, black is up a pawn. And I'm probably losing back this pawn. I was going to play queen f6, which is one of the top moves. And yeah, if white takes, I can take on c3. Black's still up a pawn, but yeah, it's an open position. White has a bishop pair. Would still definitely be a fight. Yeah, so hopefully this is a valuable lesson for my opponent. That bishop g5 is really just off limits here. So, rated 1961. Let's keep climbing the rating ladder and we'll do one more. Okay, playing Mohammed Ghazala, rated 1937. Sticking with e4. And we have another Nimzowitsch. Are we going to have another, like, Scotch transposition? Well, I guess this time, yeah, I'm not quite playing d4. The previous game I played d4. Here I'm playing knight f3. I think muscle memory just took over there. Ah, we have the Colorado Gambit. Yeah, chess.com calls this Colorado. It's kind of cut off, but hopefully people can trust me. Oh man. I don't think I've ever studied this. I just know the name of the opening. Like, am I supposed to take or play e5? There's knight c3. And e5 looks like the most natural. I guess there is d6, but then bishop e5. Takes queen d5. Interesting. Oh, this could get tactical. e5. d6. Bishop b5. I'm going to go for e5. I don't want to like burn too much time. And I'm hoping I can just get a playable position. So bishop. I could also take and play d4. That might be a bit simpler to understand. Because yeah, I'm not sure about these lines. Bishop e5 takes queen d5. I mean, there's queen h5, but looks a little bit too murky. And if I take first, takes, and then queen d5, g2 is hit. Yeah, as much as I want to go into that, I'm just going to take and play d4. Yeah, I think this is way more controlled. And sometimes this is a strategy when you're encountering gambits that you haven't seen before. Rather than going into the messy lines, you just want to choose a solid approach. Somewhat of a question where to put my bishop. Few options. I could play bishop g5 too. Bishop g5. There's e6. We're getting some slightly weird structure. I'm going to go for bishop g5. If black allows me to take and double the pawns, or double the f-pawns, I should be happy. And I'm thinking of e6. I can maybe try and get this move in pawn d5. And then damage black structure. Black plays queen a5. That does unpin, or the knight wasn't even pinned, but I guess that does put me in check. Just realizing knight e4 was also possible there. And if I play c3, knight e4, c3 looks like the most solid. If knight e4, I might just play knight d2 and allow the trade. Prioritize development. I know it looks a little bit weird to allow knight takes bishop, but if black's going to move the knight a bunch of times just to trade it off, and okay, if h6 I would have had queen h5. And the knight is decently placed here actually. I could maybe consider h4. There's also bishop c4. Yeah, let's start with bishop c4. Very logical move, just targeting f7. And there is d5. Wow, there's h6. I guess the point is if I play knight f7, then black maybe gets away with this, but then I take. Wait a minute. Okay, knight f7. There's also rook h7. Yeah, maybe it doesn't quite work. But I also have bishop f7. Bishop f7 looks a bit more promising. King d8 and then knight e6. If king d7, I have bishop e6. Okay, I'm going to go for this. Trying to call black's bluff. You do have to sometimes be careful, like putting your pieces in the opponent's territory like this. But after knight e6, and there's also just this move too. And there's also this move, knight c4. I can probably save knight c4 for later. Let's start with this. If takes, black's still alive. Like I haven't won any material. But the king is a bit awkward on d8. We see bishop g7. So I think I just want a castle now. And then use the e-file, reinforce the bishop. I mean, going forward, it's, I think, going to be very difficult for black to remove the bishop from e6. I could potentially double up. d5 in the air. I'm still considering ways to target the queen as well. But let's start with rook e1. Okay. Yeah, I'm debating between like b4 and knight c4. Black's playing really quickly this game, so do have to keep up the tempo. I also have a4, because if I play b4 first, there's queen a3. Actually, that looks fine as well. Yeah, let's go for b4. If queen a3, I'd probably just defend the c-pawn and then look to play knight c4. Or maybe even just b5. And if queen a6, then I was thinking a4. And there's also this move, but then queen c3. So queen c2 might be the simplest option. Just defending the c-pawn. And this queen is asking to be punished. Knight e8, okay. Attacking the bishop. Can I play bishop c4? Taking away the last getaway square from the queen. Now I'm controlling all these squares, and the threat is actually knight b1. Undeveloping my knight, but trapping the queen. And I don't really see how black deals with this threat. I mean, there's so few pieces to help out. Like all black's pieces are really kind of stuck doing nothing. Yeah, sometimes moves like bishop c4 are hard to consider because, I mean, knight c4, even a move like d5 might look more attractive, or knight b1 first. But sometimes it's the prophylactic moves which are the most powerful. And I really don't see how black can get anything for the queen. Like if takes, I take and then I open the file. And this might be the best try. I could also still trap the queen after knight b1. Okay, d5, another try. But knight b1 and... yeah, if I lose the bishop, I win the queen. Okay. Quicker game than the previous two, but pretty clean. And yeah, this Colorado Gambit, I'm just aware of the existence of the opening, but yeah, it might be worth investigating what to play. I do remember seeing this opening on the Chess Mood website, because Chess Mood has a whole repertoire as white within E4, and they have a whole like course on how to refute various gambits, including the Stafford Gambit. And I know they have some video lessons on how to deal with this opening, so I guess I'll probably have to check it out myself. And yeah, friendly reminder, or I guess not really a reminder, but just to let people know, the June promotion for Chess Mood is over. I was giving free access to all my viewers to Chess Mood for the whole month of June. But even though it's over, there's still a discounted offer, and I can leave that information below. I believe you can get 20% off Chess Mood memberships and get access to their whole repertoire courses, along with a lot of other great training videos as well. According to the engine, the best move is to take, but what I did was also fine, pawn e5. And yeah, I was like, maybe if I was feeling a bit more adventurous, I would have played bishop e5, but this looked really unclear. Like takes, if takes, queen d5, and yeah, it seems like black has momentum going their way. Takes, knight f3, e5 looks playable, even queen e6 check. So probably good that I didn't go into that. And yeah, what happened in the game, I think one of the pitfalls for my opponent is they just move too quickly. Like maybe, yeah, maybe they should have taken a bit more time, especially around here with bishop f7 in the air. Engine says that d5 was the best move, just kicking the bishop back. But yeah, once we got here, life was very good, and then it just got better. Bishop c4, and black has no escape. So, some fun games today. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have questions, do leave them below, and I'll see you guys soon.